Okay, thank you very much for coming today. I want to first thank Jack Peacock with Carolina Antiques, Tom Mayberger, the Tiffin Glass Collectors Club, and the National Depression Glass Association for welcoming us to the Heminger Center to share our story. We're here to talk about the things that happen behind the scenes. We're not here to talk about the science of glass. I think you probably know much more about that than we do. But we just wanted to share our story and kind of talk a little bit about growing up during that time frame. I would like to introduce my sister, Sheila Bohr, and Clyde King. My name is Mike Carlson from Springfield, Ohio. I give you just a little bit of a background on both of us. We were both born and raised in Tiffin, Ohio. My sister left Tiffin in '72, came back in '79, and started to raise a family. She has 3 daughters, one in Florida, one in Kent, Ohio, and one in San Francisco. I left Tiffin in 1984, went down to the Dayton area, went to college, and I never came back. It's kind of interesting to see people follow in their family's footsteps or not follow in the footsteps. And a lot of things happen along the way that cause us to take a different path in our careers. I personally am in the health and human services field. I've been there for 27 years with the same employer, hard to believe. But didn't really take that path as far as what Dad did. So I wanted to just kind of give a real brief background. We visit Tiffin frequently. Last June, I was at a glass show at the Tiffin Middle School, and I'm very close friends with Jack Peacock. I've known him since he was in his late teens. And I think Jack is like almost 70 now, so I've known him for a very long time. But he had asked me last June if we would be interested in doing that, and I said absolutely. And so it's a real honor to be able to come here and talk a little bit about the things that we experienced growing up. So, little quote there. I tend to feel very strongly about that. There's a lot of things that have happened in my lifetime where I was able to learn from failures and move on and succeed at better other things. So, this is a little bit of a background as far as the U.S. Glass Company. I kind of hesitated to put this in the slide, but I wanted to put that up just to kind of give you an idea of what happened starting back in the 1880s up through the birth of Tiffin Art Glass, which happened in September of 1963. I'm going to allow my sister Sheila to talk more about what took place at the plant in the 60s, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the 70s because she left Tiffin in '72. So I'm going to let her share some stories with you because she worked in the outlet store, and she can, give a few things that make you a chuckle. So.
Is everyone okay with me sitting down, or would you prefer me standing?
Can't hear you very well.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone involved in keeping Tiffin alive. It has just been incredible that the Glass Museum has been open for 30 years now. Mike, John, and I had attended the dedication 30 years ago, and it just, where does time go? The endless research, personal time, and dedication of those of you who have maintained its existence have provided its legacy to continue. And for that, I would like to thank you. My early memories of the glass house were on Saturday mornings with my father. He had me in tow. And of course he'd go around to each of the departments checking to see that things are running fine or listen to problems that people have had or whatever. As I became familiar with the factory, I kind of took off on my own and decided to explore. As I got more comfortable, I was all over the place. God bless the people that kept track of me. Martha Ziegler, Joe Maxwell, Bill Wolf, Charlie and Polly Fiesel, Andy Sowers, Mousie Myers, Pete Moore, Clyde King. I mean, the list goes on and on, but I'm sure that they, let's hope someone kept an eye on me. Can you imagine today having a child run around a glass factory? My earliest memories of working at the glass house were in 1962 when the company went bankrupt. St. Gregory Cartage came and brought all the merchandise that we had to a building behind the old A&P, and I can't point reference the street. I've been away from Tiffin for too long, but it was down the street from the hospital. I was given a table at that time. I think they just didn't know what to do with me, so they stuck me out in a walkway, and believe it or not, I sold things. So it got into my blood in an early age. That May, 4 former employees, my father, Bill, Paul Williams, Ellsworth Beatty, and Lee Platt, pulled their resources together and started Tiffin Glass Company, Inc. And at that point is when United States Glass was no longer. So Factory R was the last factory that remained, and in '63, United States Glass was gone. Around 1967, the outlet mall where we sold seconds must have been booming because Martha came to us, a group, we call them the Three Musketeers, and hired us, which was Teresa Warren, Tom Birch, and myself. And at that time, Joan Rarick and Margaret Birch were the main people in the store, and unfortunately they had to keep an eye on us, keep us busy. So every Saturday we would come in, and the second glassware that they had for the week would be stacking in those cartons, 36 by 36 cartons. And we would be responsible to set up tables if we needed them, to table the glassware, to dust, to run the register, to pack the glassware, and many times did we take the glassware out to the people's cars. In the summertime, we gave tours through the factory between the three of us. And then there was 1 week out of the summer where we had the big tent sale, where they set up the tent in the center of the glass inside the gate, and it must have done very well because we did it for several years. And at that time, we brought in people from the outside to work it too. They were long, tiring days, but I think the profit was great. Being the daughter of the boss was not always pleasant. I just seemed like I was always in the doghouse. And I look at these comments and I think justly so. I either talked too much to the employees. Of course, everyone wanted to talk, and I mean, I'm a talker, so it always took me a while to get from the machines all the way back to the store, and I would be in the doghouse because I talked too much. And then there, in the summer, I was caught tanning on the roof of the glass house. We tried our hand at glass blowing, but thank goodness some of the blowers were there to help us with that. And then the time we decided to ride down the conveyor belt in a box. And that had to be on a Sunday when no one was around. And I guess the real thing that we did was we went in the etching room one Sunday morning. It was slow. We had gotten our work done early, and we saw these plates sitting on the table ready to be etched and to put the wax on. And we decided, oh, they are going to be so happy that we helped them. So we put wax on the plates, we laid them out, we shut the lights off and left. Well, the next day after school we went in there and well, let me back up. Joe Maxwell was livid and went up to Dad's office and said, "Your daughter shut off the wax and now my staff cannot work for the entire morning." And Dad said, "Well, what do you think we ought to do about it?" And he said, "Well, I think they ought to be suspended." And he said, "Well, go ahead." So when we walked in after school, you know, we were greeted at the door and told we had to go home for 2 weeks. So after 3 days, I think they got us back. They must have needed us in the store for some reason. So and thank goodness they kept the gold and platinum locked, because we probably would have tried our hand at that. So in the short time that I worked there, Tiffin Art Glass was sold to Continental Can in 1966. Continental Can had sold the company in '68 to Interpace, which was complemented the glass house more because at that time they were able to pair, it was a China company, and they were able to pair the crystal with the china that they had. And then they made earthenware, and so we made the Madeira line, which was referred to as the California lifestyle. We referred to it as the Flintstone ware. So, and it was heavy to have to table that. The year I graduated from college, I had the opportunity to work for Carl Ossenheimer, and I probably learned more in that short year than I did the entire time I was there. I was able to research old patterns, to do etchings of the glassware, to write correspondence to the people, and it was just, his amount of knowledge was just unbelievable. Then in January was the Atlantic City show, and I had the opportunity to go 1 year with my parents. I'm not sure the exact title of it, but it was the Gift and China Trade Show or whatever. But Tiffin Glass, along with many, many other people, had set up a booth. And I was just in such awe to see the light shining down, the covering, the glass sparkling, and most of all, I had the I think the salesman that impressed me the most was Bill Hill, and he could sell anything to anybody. But they had some fantastic salesmen, and I think that's where they got a lot of their sales for the beginning of the year from the department stores. And then I have such respect for the people that work there. The precise measuring and mixing of the batches of material, the cleaning and preparing of the molds, the many men who gathered the molten glass, the skilled men who blew the stemware or pressed ware, those who sheared off the tops before putting in the layer to be tempered. They were just absolutely amazing to be able to work at the speed they worked, to have the talent they did, and to be in such extreme heats. It just amazed me, and I guess I didn't get a taste of that until we had to do tours through the plant. And then after that came the artists, and the glassware was either cut, and of course we have Clyde King with us that I just cannot say enough about. He did beautiful, beautiful work, and I still have the lovebirds in my china cabinet that she cut. Or they etched them or painted platinum and silver around, platinum or gold around the tops. And some stemware had all three of them done. I just feel like I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by such wonderful, amazing, talented artists at the glass factory over the years. You don't realize it when you're going through something like this, but you look back and you're just like, wow, you know, these people are incredible. And for those of us here today and those no longer here, I want to thank you for everything that you gave to Tiffin Glass. Special thank you, and I was hoping Martha Ziegler would be here, but she was just absolutely amazing for the plant, for our family. She was indeed the rock of the glass house. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to talk. Thank you.
So for those of you who are in the back that may not be able to see what is up on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and read this to you, just so you guys are able to make sure that you can, you know what the slide is. Our grandfather, Charles W. Carlson Sr., also known as C.W. and Charlie, was born in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1901. He married our grandmother, Eva Barbara Conley, in 1924. They had 3 children, Ellen Jane Fitch, Charles W. Carlson, and James Jimmy Carlson, who passed away in March of '61. After the Great Depression, our grandfather took a position with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. It's a department that was created by the federal government to help climb out of the Great Depression. Prior to 1938, someone or some entity approached my grandfather and asked him if he would be willing to help U.S. Glass from going into bankruptcy. So he not only said yes to trying to do that, but then he took that additional risk and moved his family from Pittsburgh to Tiffin. And to me, that was very courageous. I don't know if I personally would be able to do something like that. And sometimes to be very successful, you have to take some major risks in life, and he did. Some historians thought that he was an attorney. He was never an attorney. He was just a self-made businessman. So I wanted to make sure that you guys were able to hear that in the back if you couldn't read it. So I want to share some stories about myself and my grandfather. Obviously, I was born in 1963. So Sheila, she was like 12 years old when I was born. And so she had a lot more memories of the glass house than I did. Although I did go into the plant on Saturday mornings with Dad around 73, 74, 75. I look back and think, oh my gosh, I'm thinking, my wife and I have an 8-year-old son, and I couldn't even imagine in this day and age ever allowing your child to roam a glass plant with furnaces at 2,000 plus degrees. So, so my grandfather was born in February of '01. My father was born on St. Patrick's Day in 1930. Now, on the move to Tiffin, I'm not positive on this date. Sheila and I talked about this quite a bit this week. I remember I was very close with my aunt, and we had a lot of discussions in the late 90s into the early 2000s. I recall her telling me they moved to Tiffin in 36, and then I'm seeing some where it says 1944. We pretty much agreed it was 1938. Then my grandfather retired from the glass house in 1959, and the month before I was born, my father and the three others reopened the plant under the name Tiffin Art Glass. And then by May of '75, my memory was that Toll silversmiths were going to be coming in to take over the company. And I just remember Dad not feeling comfortable the direction it was going, and so he decided to be a glass consultant. So he left in May of 1975 and went on. He and Paul joined back up in 76, 77, 78 and developed their own little glass consulting company in Tiffin. And at that point, there was, Dad referred to him as a headhunter, found them, and they built an all-electric glass furnace in Taunton, Massachusetts in 1978. And I remember going out there. I was like in 5th, 6th grade, and I remember going out there, and they were just starting to put the building up, the structure of the building, and this guy came up to my dad and pointed to me and says, "Hey, we don't have that guy on the payroll." My dad laughed. He goes, "That's my son." He says, "I'm putting him to work." So I was like cleaning up all the construction material, throwing it in the dumpster and all that stuff. So anyways, let me go to this next slide. I'm going to jump down to 1979 first. In 1979, it was a very significant year for our family. In November of '78, we found out that my mother had lung cancer. And in April of 1979, my grandfather, my mom's dad, passed away he had a lot of emphysema complications. And then in August of 1979, my grandfather, C.W. Sr., passed away, and the next month, my mom passed away. So 1979 really changed the course of our family. I still believe to this day that if my mom was still living, our entire family dynamics would be so different right now. And so, it really changed the course of our entire life. And then 2 years after that, I was in an automobile accident, which left me with a paralysis. And I just can't even imagine what my dad was going through at that time, after that. Especially since my wife and I have had a son, I really see the impact that it probably had on him. So it was a very significant year. So going back up to the first one, glass galore at home. We had so much glassware in that house, it wasn't funny. My dad, the basement was finished. They had a bar down there. He had all kinds of stuff. And I can remember we would be breaking stuff all the time. We never thought a thing about it. We just pitched it. We didn't think about that kind of stuff. And he had his collections. And of course, it was passed on to primarily Sheila and I have most of it. My older brother has some. But it just, we didn't think anything of it when a piece of, glass would break. And you look back, we just never thought it would come to this, where it's at now. we never knew that there was a legacy that was going to follow. So that was kind of interesting. Saturday mornings at the plant, a couple things I can remember, and Clyde, you might be able to help me with this. There was a gentleman in a factory that had this little yellow electric cart. It was 3-wheel and you plugged it in. Well, I would unplug that thing on Saturday mornings and I would drive that little yellow cart all over the plant. And then they'd come in on Monday morning, the battery was dead. You know, or the little electric cart wasn't where it was supposed to be. It was somewhere, you know. So I remember that. The other thing was when I would be up in the office with Dad, Martha would be in her office, which was kind of adjacent to Dad's office. And I can remember her on that IBM typewriter, and that thing sounded like a machine gun. Martha could type so fast, it wasn't funny. It was just amazing. And like Sheila said, she was the glue. I mean, she really held things together. And then the other thing I remember was I would always be calling Dad at the office from home, and Martha would put me on hold, and I would just keep hearing this click, 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 you know, the waiting thing. And sometimes it'd be 20 minutes until Dad answered the phone. So it was just, it was interesting. You know, it was, but it allowed Mom to be able to, you know, do some things with my younger brother and kind of get, you know, the two of us out of her hair. And, you know, Dad, you know, gave him something to do too. So yeah, the pre-OSHA, again, I said that earlier. I couldn't imagine my wife and I having our 8-year-old son roam around in a factory like that. I have to shake my head in this day and age, you know, to think, oh my gosh, I mean, I would never do something like that. Dad's idea of a vacation, Dad traveled so much. His idea of a vacation was spending time in his yard. His yard, and for Mom too, that was their dream. And for any of you who have ever been to our home over on Lelar Street, Mom and Dad always had the trees all lit up in the summertime and fountains going. They had a gazebo in the back. You know, they just loved to do that. Dad did not want to travel because he traveled so much. We did go on trips, but not, you know, not a lot. So, and then the long distance relationship, again, once Dad started working in the Boston area, I would travel out there for several weeks at a time during the summer of '77 to '78 and hang out with him for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And there was a couple times I think, you know, Mom and my little brother came out and joined us. So
This factory was actually built for Prince's House.
yeah. Charles Collis was the owner of Prince's House. Prince's House is alive and well today. If you Google Prince's House, they have a sales force of probably over 15,000 people. And it's, you know, so they have a lot of parties at homes where they're selling the product. But what happened was in '79, Charles sold Prince's House to Colgate-Palmolive, and the company just drove it into the ground. And then the employees got together and they bought the company back. But it's alive and well today. So that's my grandfather. So these next several slides that I'm going to show you are photos, and I hope some of these photos that I shared with you today are ones that you will have seen for the very first time. Clyde, if you would be able to chime in maybe to identify some of these people, great. If not, but I can tell you it was in September of 1963. So that was my grandfather in the late 60s or early 70s, and that was at my my grandma and grandpa Perry's house. That was our family photo. And that was probably about 1975, I think. So that's me right there, and that's Sheila, and my brother Chip, and my little brother John, who lives in Port Clinton. And that was at my grandma and grandpa Carlson's house at Lake Mohawk. And I am guessing, well, that was August of '67. Again, that's me. I remember wearing a wool suit. I hated it because it scratched me all the time. Mom, Dad, Sheila, and then my brother Chip. My youngest brother was not born until April of '70. So there's quite a span with the kids. This was a letter from the Toledo Blade. Thank you very much for being so helpful during the governor's visit to your factory Monday. Interesting to watch the glass blowers, and I enjoyed meeting both of you and the governor. I thought you might be interested in seeing some other pictures we took during the day, and I'm sending you these prints to keep. I have the original prints in my possession, and I'm going to share these with you today. That was the day that they came. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. Now, I'm guessing that that was torn down and there was another thing built for the gate. Because I don't think that was there in the early 70s, but that was the gate coming into the main factory. Clyde, can you help me out at all? Do you recognize any of those people? Okay, all right. And again, these were all taken by the Toledo Blade.
And if there's anybody else that can help us out, please let us know.
So that's Dad, and that's Governor Rhodes right there. Love to know what that conversation was.
Yeah.
That's Paul Williams right there, showing the governor a piece of the stemware. And again, I mean, I just know there's only two people there, and that would be Dad and the governor. I don't know who these other people are.
Paul Williams.
Oh, Paul. Yeah, Paul. I'm sorry.
I think that's my lead.
I'm sorry?
I think that's my leader, Governor Rhodes. I was there that day.
You were?
And he come to cut himself.
He did. Okay. All right.
That might be maybe in the back.
In the back behind the light?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Take a
you.
picture of it.
Thanks, Clyde. I'm so glad that either Clyde or Martha would have been here today.
Now, do you know who the blower is? Is that Ori Mitchell?
I can't. That looks like Mousy Binder on the left.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
it
okay.
does.
All right.
Yes, it does.
I don't remember that picture.
When I look at this particular photo, you know that that factory was built in the late 1800s. Just,
Is that Paul that's second from the left?
it is Paul. Yes, that's Paul right there. I'm not sure. Do you know who that is, Clyde? I'm not sure who that woman is in the back.
That's Eve Miller, your sister.
Now, I think that particular particular one was in the outlet store, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right, Clyde?
Yes. I cut him, cut a name on that face. I don't know what that is.
Uh-huh. On the vase that he's holding? So this was the letter that went out on September 10th to all the companies that purchased, just kind of letting them know that they were ramping up production and that they had a lot of orders that were going to have to be filled, and it was going to take some time to get those orders shipped out. Let me see if I can find that.
This guy cut his name and the date he was on that face.
What's that?
I think I cut Governor Rhodes' name and date he was down on
Okay.
the face.
All right.
It was all cut and polished. I kind of rounded top.
Okay. All right. So it says, we are happy to announce that negotiations have been completed for the resumption of operations in Tiffin, in the plant formerly operated by United States Glass Company. Our furnaces are being heated and stemware production will start on September 16th. In the meantime, we are applying gold and platinum bands and cutting those blanks that are presently in our inventory. Shipments of many patterns, therefore, are continuing. We have large quantities of unfulfilled orders, hence deliveries will not meet our anticipated standards for several weeks. We will, however, make every effort to satisfy our customers' requirements. The Tiffin line has been reduced so that only the most widely accepted patterns remain in the price list recently sent to you. This reduction of patterns will enable us to make very prompt shipments in the near future. Many of the patterns not appearing in the price list will be made twice annually or at such times as the accumulation of orders justify their manufacture. It says the Tiffin Art Glass Corporation is owned and managed by experienced glassmen that were associated with the Tiffin plant for many years. We are profoundly grateful for the patience, understanding, and loyal support you've demonstrated during a most difficult period, and we wish to thank you most heartily. I can't imagine what they went through in that time period from when they closed to reopening. I just can't even imagine it. So this was Thou Shalt Not by Bill Hill. Failed to answer mail, failed to ship out perfect wear, failed to ship complete patterns, failed to ship within 3 to 4 weeks, failed to have stock of hot patterns, failed to pay commissions on time, failed to have close customer relations, failed to back up salesmen, failed to supply catalogs and brochures, failed to do what we say we will do. I always remember Dad talking about Bill Hill. And at that time, I was so young that I just didn't put the connection together. But he used to talk about it quite a bit. So these are letters from governors that had to do with the National Governors Conference in Cleveland, that there were gifts given. Clyde, do you recall this as far as the... Okay, all right. So there's about 3 or 4 of them. We got State of Arkansas, State of Connecticut. And these were all addressed to Charlie Schell. Kentucky, Montana.
I was assuming that's.
State of New Hampshire. And Vermont. And that was Virginia. Okay, so Sheila and I discovered this week, I work full time, so I don't have time to do this. She's retired and was able to research some of this stuff. We found some patents that our grandfather submitted to the U.S. Patent Office in the early 40s. And so this is just to confirm the registration of the patent. And that's the design right there. I think that was 1951. Yeah, March of 51.
And that's what she'll need.
In one of my trips around the factory, I came across Grandpa's old office, and it really amazed me too. He had this big carp up on the wall, which has nothing to do with the glass, but then there were glass pieces set all around at various stages, and I happened to pick up a salad plate with the Our Father cut on it. And Clyde, I was wondering if by chance you might have done that. It was a salad plate in the green that had the Our Father cut out on it, and I have it to this day.
CW and I used to design different cut designs. And I don't remember the pattern of one, but I remember him said, I think it ought to be up a quarter of
Oh, that's funny. And I was too young. I don't even remember my grandfather's office being at the plant. So that was, that would have been. And even though he left the plant, he was still there afterwards. I mean, he still hung out at the plant. So these are just the sources. I guess the one that I would really want to point out is the first one on the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. Not a lot of people know about that because it was so long ago. And I don't remember when he would have started there, but I'm guessing probably around 31, 32, 33. And the other piece that I don't know is who approached him to help out U.S. Glass. And that is it. Thank you all very much for attending. We greatly appreciate it.